Welcome to RecLess, a podcast making people smarter and more knowledgeable about parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing their own unique and sometimes entertaining perspectives with a surprise guest each episode. This is RecLess.
Welcome to RecLess, everybody. My name's Shane Mize. I'm here with my two career buddies, Tom and Jay. What's up, fellas? How are y'all doing?
Doing well. Good to be here.
I'm great. Excited to be here.
Good. Hoping everyone's feeling a little reckless today. Got a special guest I'm looking forward to introduce in a minute. But as we always do, I wanted to have a talk. This is a question we've actually asked at least one, if not two of our guests previously. So I thought it'd be fair to ask us as well. In your career, at some point, there was an opportunity you didn't follow through. So in that capacity, the risk you wish you took career-wise, what job did you pass on? What opportunity did you not apply for that you look back at different times and be like, man, I wish I might have pursued that a little bit more. And you can even say the reason why.
What if I said joining this podcast that I wish I didn't do it?
That's fine.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
But no, I'm kind of stumped for a second. I need a second to think about this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in my career here locally, there's not a whole lot of regrets. And when there's been openings that are anything I would consider, I've taken a shot, and if I didn't get the job, which, I think there's been a few of those situations, I always believe that things happen for a reason. And I do believe that where I am is a great place and that there are limitations here locally. So I think as the two of you know, my personal situation and having all of our families here, having our kids here, we're pretty rooted. But there was a time, say 5-6 years ago, where we didn't have kids. We just got married. And there were a couple opportunities that floated my way before we had kids. And ultimately it came down to, are we comfortable leaving our families and our parents, knowing that we wanted to have kids and knowing we'd have the comfort of, hey, if we need some help with the kids, we have it. Right. So, I mean, there was a couple. I don't really think I could get into some specifics, but I will say that some of my mentors that I've had, some of the people I've talked to and leaned on, they've forwarded me so many positions. Shane, you've shared some positions in the Texas area with me. And so every once in a while, I look back and I think, what if I applied? I definitely don't live in the past, but you just never know, right? If you were to get the opportunity and the offer, what it would have held. So for me, there are some opportunities across the country. It's personal reasons or our family roots being here that we've stayed.
Sure. No, I totally get that. Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of similar, but also different to Tom's response is like, I personally don't live my life with regrets. Like, I know that sounds kind of weird, but like, I've always made a decision for a reason and I stick to it. And like, there's never been a time that I've been like, oh, I wish I would have done that different, because I've learned from it, or I grew from it, or it worked out, and don't have to look back at it and look at it as a change. I think if there's opportunities that I personally
would have worked out in some way, or no?
What's that?
Is there an opportunity you wish you would have worked out? It wasn't a regret, but maybe it's something that didn't pan out that you would have loved to have seen what happened if it would have.
I mean, there's a couple of jobs that I applied for like 5, 7, 8 years ago that I didn't get, but then I've always looked back and like, it's funny because like my wife and I have talked about like, whoa, what if that would have happened? Like how our life would have been different. But it's never been like, oh, I wish that would have happened. Prime example, I interviewed for a job in Greensboro, like probably 10 years ago. And in order for us to make that work, because of where my wife was working at the time, like we were talking about commuting halfway. So we were going to move to like a super small town, live in between Greensboro and Charlotte, be in a small apartment and kind of save money for a while, not having to have a house payment and all that. And then we like look back at it because we'll drive up the highway and we'll see that small town and we'll be like, man, life would have been so different if we moved out of Charlotte to live in this town. We didn't get the job. So I've never looked at it and been like, oh, I wish I would have got that, because there's so many other variables that would have come with it that who knows where our direction would have gone. But I've also gone on job interviews that didn't work out. And it's maybe a good thing because I learned a lot about the agency when I was on that interview process that like, ooh, maybe it wasn't a great fit to go through and actually take that if I would have gotten it.
No, I kind of agree with y'all. I think it's interesting at some point, the crossroads of our career and our ambition have to be weighed out with family and what growth looks like on the family side, what your spouse is potentially doing, and how that would affect their job. My wife is a Texas school teacher, so moving to any other state, even though I've had quite the ambition to do that, she would have to either recertify or it'd have to transfer over. And so you have to think of all those things. I think when you're potentially unattached and younger, it's much easier. And we've had some people on that have highlighted that in their career. But I have tried a couple times to find really good spots to move out west. I think y'all know that I'd like to live in a less populated spot than Austin eventually.
And it is out west as far away from us as possible.
Far as possible. That's usually how I Google it. But I do hope that those opportunities will come around again. But I've been headhunted. I've had some opportunities to at least apply for positions that I didn't apply. And I've looked at those even years after and thought, wonder what would have happened if I'd have gone there. Could I have turned that around, or would they have been sailing as high as they were if I was there? Would I have brought them down in some way or another? It's fun sometimes to get on job boards just to look at jobs, just to be like, man, what would it be like to run that agency? And sometimes that's therapy. Sometimes you have a rough day and you go look at job boards and you say, okay, no, I'm all right here. Yeah, I've definitely looked at different opportunities in the past, and some of the ones out west. There were some in Colorado as well. There was one in Utah that I thought, man, that'd have been really cool if the right place and the right time would have matched up. But I think it has to be all of it for it to really work out. So, well, let's bring on the guest. Let's do a little bit of guessing. You are terrible at this, so I'm going to try to make it easy for you. So it's not an Academy member. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're a previous 30 under 30 member. So probably a future Academy member, but nowhere near it at the time. They are a motivational speaker. They have experience working at Salvation Army in Nashville. They have been a rec manager in Tennessee as well, and have some experience in a YMCA in Bozeman, Montana. Any guesses so far?
No. You got me again.
I got one.
Okay. They were a previous director in Dayton, Tennessee.
Got it. I win. When you said Tennessee, it's the first person that came to mind. So
cool.
I know. Great person.
They've been an AD in Panama City, Florida, and are currently the director of recreation for Turner Rec Commission in Kansas City. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Nathan Fort. And he's live.
Surprise, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
How are y'all?
Good. How you doing? This is a real surprise. A first.
Yeah.
A live guest in one of our own little studios.
That is very interesting. I
thought
you when I saw him on your screen, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm really confused. Is there like some sort of like optical illusion going on right now? What's going on, Nathan? How you doing, man?
Way to trick you just a little bit, Jay. Tom, how are y'all doing today? We're doing good. It's nice to be in Texas besides this hot weather.
You should be used to it though, right? I mean, you've had some hot states before. Maybe not as hot as Texas.
We love the cold. We love the mountains, and
don't get much of that here.
We don't like the heat because then we sweat profusely. It doesn't look good. No, it doesn't look good. So.
Well, let me ask the first question. So for the guest that didn't pick up on it, we normally do a 4-wide shot, and our guest is zooming in, but Nathan had family in Pflugerville, so he's here today. So we're super excited. So question number one, you've moved a lot as a young professional, and there's an old adage, you either move up or you move out. And I think it's something a lot of professionals, especially younger professionals, feel like they have to go through. We had Maria on a couple of pods back, and she's done the same thing. And so, but that doesn't come without great costs, both financial. You have to get a new apartment or a new house. You have to kill a lease sometimes, or pay to travel. And as we all know, some of our boots on the ground or middle management positions don't always get those travel allowances that directors do. So I just would love to hear a little bit from your perspective on the cost of that, both physically, mentally, financially. You've maybe made some friends and you've got to go set a new group of friends in that new town. And so what's that been like?
It's been great, but it's also been challenging, Shane.
Yeah.
It's actually been fun because I'll tell you one thing. It's all about your beliefs, values, where you start at. You have to start with the why of why you're doing it. Biggest thing for me was traveling around. You're in a small town. It's a small town of 60 people in Arkansas. People don't go anywhere. People don't travel as much. My family never did. My family stayed in Arkansas to pretty much work. So my biggest thing was I wanted to go travel, see the world. That was a big thing that my parents really taught me to do, because they never did as much. They didn't have the financial means to do it. So when they had the financial means, they wanted to do it for the kids. And so the biggest thing for them was go do what you love, because we do that right now, but go do it successfully. But like I said, there's different ways of doing that. So one thing I did was go around, travel different places and gain that experience, because my background wasn't in recreation. It was more in like health and physical education, which is more teaching, not really much, Parks and Rec. What I'm doing right now, my master's, is teaching me more than it does in my bachelor's. But growing from that, going to those different places, it's allowed me to see different people. It's allowed me to see different experiences. It's allowed me to see people's different stories. It allows me to take the rec ideas from Montana, Arkansas, Florida, Tennessee, and just combine those into, okay, how can I serve right now in the city that I'm in right now, instead of just populating just right there? Because now we open up sign language, we open up trying to do curling, we're trying to do more pain classes, things. I'm like, I took those experiences from those places and brought it here, and I wouldn't have got that. But you're right, it does come with a cost as well, because sometimes you don't make that right move. And that was one thing that happened to me, kind of like in Panama City Beach. It didn't work out for me.
Even if the right move's good, maybe you like the area, or you've got family there, or you have some other connection. If work doesn't work out, it makes it tough, right?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And so you take that risk as well. Biggest thing I did for Panama City Beach was go over there, because I had family over there, which is now going to move up to Atlanta. So now you get to a point where you're like, I may have not made the right decision on that. Right. I may have chased money instead of purpose. And I think one thing I want to teach young professionals and teach everybody is just don't make that same mistake I did and go chase that money, because the money's going to come. But the purpose, the why, and how you do it, and also the love and energy that you bring as well, that's going to bring you forward than money ever will. And that's something
they may chase titles too. We talk about that a lot from time to time, trying to get that manager title, that director title, but then you go to a spot that maybe doesn't align with your values, or you have a tough time meeting. We've got friends in our little group that have moved around a lot, and they move to a new city and they have a tough time transitioning.
And that can be tough, because you want to get to that top director position. When I was in Montana, I'm like, man, I have a chance to go be a director in Tennessee. Let's do this. But then you're like, you don't realize the cost of it. Right. You don't realize how much it is to move. Then it's like, okay, you have the stress of now taking over a new position, a new department, brand new staff. How are you going to transition into that when you're going into a place you have no idea how?
No connection, maybe. You're still trying to figure out where you're going to live and unbox your stuff every night. Yeah.
But stuff like Dayton, Tennessee really helped me grow and really learn and mature as not just a young professional, not just as a director, but as a young man. And that's one of the reasons why I did that. But now you get to a point when you're a little bit older, 29, 30 years old, you're wanting to settle down, you're wanting to get to a point. So it's all about where you're at in your life, but also what your beliefs are, your values, like your family.
Nathan, you said two things I want to dive into a little deeper. And you mentioned purpose. And I think what is so important, and I feel like the longer you're in a profession, the more you realize what your purpose is, or the impact that we're having on communities and people. And so many times I've had so many conversations with young professionals that are either interviewing because they want that paycheck or they want that title. And in some cases they get it and they get the job, but then they're not happy because they realize their purpose was more on a connection with people, but not managing a facility or managing a department. Or they don't get the job because really the reality is they're just not ready yet. And then they get discouraged and they just don't know what to do next. And I'm sure we've all been in those situations where we don't get a job or we don't get what we want in a scenario. But, what advice would you have for a young professional that is trying to climb the ladder for whatever reason? Could be money, could be title, could be just they're burnt out from their current job. They're not getting it. They're getting discouraged. What would you say to them to continue to stay positive?
I think the biggest thing, I tell my staff this all the time, Jay, you got to find out what you love internally. For me, I love pickleball, basketball, hiking. What does that all entail? All recreation. So I do this in my daily life as well. If I'm sitting over here doing data analytics as part of what I love to do I think I'm going to be in Parks and Rec mainly? Probably not as much, maybe from a data analytical aspect, but not in that sense of engaging with people, connecting with others, wanting to build, maximize, grow.
You probably want a smaller agency versus a really large one, because even if you're at the top of it, you want to have human interaction every day with those constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. Biggest thing for young professionals I can give, Jay, is during those times, find out what you love internally. Find out what your beliefs and values are. Start with that. That's you have to grow from there. Just like I think Tom brought that up. You stayed in your position in New York because you want to be close to your family. That's big. And when we look at our values and systems, we have to think, okay, where is family at on that? And then we have to put, okay, where's our job at? I have to tell my employees all the time, I have to look at you as a person first and as an employee second. If I don't, we will not be successful moving forward. The biggest thing to tell young professionals is love what you do at first. Find your passion. Find what you actually love. I love programming. This is why I love going to Kansas City and doing that in a big metropolitan city.
Yeah.
I may not be a director of Parks and Recreation, but guess what? I still love what I do. I still make more money than what I did in Dayton, Tennessee.
And the director of programs sounds like a pretty good gig for someone that loves programming.
Exactly. You find that love and passion that if you can't find that, then you won't make it in Parks and Recreation. It's what it is, because Parks and Rec is what you make it. But for that to happen, you have to have it internally.
Service is a tough job if you're not enjoying where you're at to serve.
Exactly. And so for those young professionals that want to think that may be discouraged or may think, I don't know if I can get to that director position. If you don't think you can, don't be bitter about that. Go be better about it.
Yeah.
For me, I don't have my CPRP. Am I going to be bitter about that? No, we have to go be better at that so we can grow, maximize, and have those goals as well. But we have to self-internalize ourselves and see where we can go forward and how we can be a director. And also just having that support from, like TRAPS or from NRPA, having that backup as well to have mentors, have people there. I have people all over Tennessee like Cheryl Ely, who's in Knoxville, or Jennifer Latouro in Clarksville, who have helped me. Hey, this is where you need to be at to be a director, but here are the steps you're going to have to do, just like problem solving, personnel, all these other problems for you to get to that position.
Tom, we're in a poker group. Tom, Jay, and I, and a couple other folks are in a poker group. What we're kind of been talking about, it'd be interesting to get your feedback on it a little bit too before your next question is, if you take a job that maybe resume-wise you're ready for it, but it turns out it's not the right fit, even if it's a title you're hoping for and the money would make your life easier, it's almost like laying down a hand that you think might be tough to be beaten, like laying down what you think is the best hand at times because you're unsure that ultimately it's going to be the right hand 3 cards from now or whatever. It's something I've never thought about before, but it's a pretty interesting dynamic to have ambition for your resume to be able to match up with that, for someone to find value in that, a title and a promotion / pay to be the things you're hankering for in some capacity. But the best move may still be to turn it down. That'd be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to that point of finding the right fit for you versus sometimes what's the opportunity right in front of you. And that I can personally resonate with that as well. My current position was something that it was a natural progression in our area for the field, in general, but also kind of in our area as far as how positions go. And so when I took the job, and Nathan, first of all, nice to talk to you. Nice to meet you. I don't think we've ever had an actual conversation or been introduced. So it's great. I love having guests like this. And so really glad to have you and glad to meet you.
Thank you, Tom. That means a lot.
Yeah. So, you talked about your passion and you're a director of programs. And so kind of playing off of what Shane had just mentioned, when I took the position that I currently have, and that's director of Parks and Recreation, my passion, everything that I had known, even as an assistant director, was programming. And we talk about why a lot. I've had these conversations with Jay and with Shane and, what's our why? And for me, it's people, it's generally serving people. And it's all about that Facebook post or that phone call or that email you get that someone basically tells you made a difference in their lives, in their kids' lives, that they're going to remember. It's something that experience you provided something to remember. So for me, when I went to Parks and Recreation, I didn't know a lot about parks. We've had that conversation before, right? That, okay, you're going to learn something new. And now I didn't know, but I love it now. Developing a park system, there's a lot of reward in that for me based on now what I'm seeing for who's benefiting from the system and what we've been able to do to take it to what I believe is the next level. For you, as someone who finds that passion as a director of programs, I kind of wanted to know, what is that? What drives you with that passion, right? What is it about being a director of programming? And it's not a conversation that we have a lot on this podcast, so I'm glad we're going to talk a little bit more about programs and diving in there. So a kind of 2-part question. What is it that drives you and gives you that passion to be the director of programs and why that's the best fit for you? And can you share a couple really cool, innovative things that you've been doing in terms of programming?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, Tom, Jay, where I'm from, town of 60 people out in the Ozark Mountains, it's let's just say this. There ain't much out there. I'm going to tell you this. You're going to have cows, chickens, whatever animal you want, you got it, even llamas. So you don't really have rec programming out there.
Sure.
You really have some park spaces there. You're in the mountains, so you're thinking more of National Park Service. But when I think of Parks and Rec, I didn't know Parks and Rec until I got to college at Bethel College and went, wait, I can do this as a career.
Full time. Isn't that crazy?
But the thing was, programming got me out of trouble. It actually got me to save my life, because when I got in trouble, they were like, well, do something productive. Start planning things. I started loving doing it. It got me out of trouble. It got me out of drugs, alcohol, anything you could think of. And it really changed my life from there. And like I said, that's where you find that purpose and build from that. And yeah, from there, I just started programming and loving it, doing it from adaptive programming all the way to just art programming, all the way to just simple special event programming. Programs that we're doing right now, Tom, this is very, very different. I'm also a American Sign Language instructor as well. And so we do American Sign Language. This is a topic that we brought up with NRPA's diversity, inclusion, equity standards, was what are we doing with sign language moving forward? We have 9% of the population of the United States deaf and or hard of hearing. And there are sign language instructors everywhere. For us to have sign language, to go to a community college and do that, it's going to be over $1,500. My class is $25
Oh, wow.
for a whole community.
That's cool.
We've been doing that.
That's really cool.
What we're going to do now is, how many of y'all know who master gardeners are? Well, my uncle works in the garden too, but he has hearing aids. He cannot hear in the garden. You have a senior population, master gardeners, that cannot hear and are deaf and are hard of hearing. We have 60% of that population. So we are doing what we call an ASL signs and seeds event, where they're going to teach. I get to talk about sign language in the garden.
That's cool. Signs and seeds.
Yes,
I love that.
It's called.
That's really cool.
So
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that one.
And will all those be plant related? Like this is tree, this is
this is grow in sign language. Just teach everybody that. Okay.
He's flipping us off for the
We'll save that for after hours podcast. But just that's some programming that we're doing as well. And then, like I said, we're starting spin classes. We're starting health and wellness classes that they have never done before.
That's cool.
Fully. And then from there, we're even doing like a Lego club.
Yeah.
Legos have super popular around our area, and so we're bringing an instructor in to actually teach people how to build Legos. And it's also for adults too.
Yeah.
But we make this a multi-generational program where we include. It's only $50, and it's for 7 family members, and it's for all 5 weeks.
Lego's like a gateway drug. You start playing with it. You help your nephew open up a box of Legos. You look up later, you're still building something, man. Those are addictive.
Oh yeah, and you're on Amazon later trying to get one for yourself. I want to ask a quick follow-up question on this, because we just submitted a grant proposal that it actually incorporated signing at a summer concert series. And so currently we're not doing that. And to your point, there's a population out there that we're not necessarily reaching. So, having that skill is amazing. And all jokes aside, I think that this is amazing. And I wish this is one of those episodes. My wife and I just talked about not being able to see, right? She's like, are you ever going to do this where there's going to be video? And I said, I don't know, not right now, but you were just giving us the sign language in Shane's word, flipping us off, but our viewers aren't going to be able to see that. And that just plays right into what we're talking about right now. It almost makes me think of even to a point
enough in our little
even our podcast, right? You know what I mean? And so, what are some ways that you can give tips to others who are doing programming that they can go and reach the population in that sense? What outside of what I just mentioned is maybe hiring an interpreter at a concert. Is there, are you doing something like that in other programs as well?
When I first came in, we didn't really do anything with diversity, inclusion, and equity, which Jay, I'm big on diversity, inclusion, and equity programming. And so one thing that we want to do is we have to self-identify who we are as an organization with our mission, objectives, values, and go, are we including everybody in that? Let's look at our needs assessment, community assessment, and go from there. When I see 60% of master gardeners in that population that cannot hear, that's where I'm thinking, hey, let's bring this idea. Let's bring a proposal to K-State. Let's bring an idea to this master gardeners. Let's just put it out there just to see. And yes, it takes the time, the energy, and the effort. But guess what? You're serving the community in such a big way. And I'll tell you this, that plan took me 30 minutes to do. If I can take 30 minutes out of my time to do that, then I can take 1 minute to send an email, to make a phone call, to have that happen. And so one thing from that is we just grew from there. And one thing that we've had to do is, community outreach engagement is huge in what we do. And that's one thing that we've had to look at is, are we doing everything diversity inclusion wise from our standards? From us, if we're not helping people mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, socially, we're not doing Parks and Rec at all. So the biggest thing you got to look at is, am I being diverse, inclusive, and equitable with people watching our show? And even if I'm missing a certain population, how can I reach that? Okay, what strategies can I provide for that? Example for us, for sign language, we knew there's a population for it. So we decided, hey, let's build an event just around it. Free events, sign language, let's bring everybody out. This is my first event I ever did for it. We'll maybe have about 40, 50. It went to 150. Okay, we tried. Now we see it. Let's maximize it now. Now we have that population. Let's maximize it now. But then also go in with those summative and formative evaluations and go, what can I help you one-on-one? How can I help you to make sure that you want to stay in this program and that I can help you in any way I can?
That's interesting. We talked earlier just on this episode about the weight and the gravity and the toll potentially of applying for other jobs and moving to do spots and it potentially not working out. But we've also talked about how our industry is a very small industry, right? And when people move from one agent to another and they take new diverse ideas with them, they make that new agency better. And it also makes our world a little smaller. Like, could you maybe talk about some of the benefits that you've seen in your pursuits throughout your career, right? So what was the benefit of going to Panama City and Bozeman, Montana, developing probably some friends that you still have to this day and that you're still close with? I mean, the world's a lot smaller, it feels like, than it used to be. With social media, you can always stay connected with them. But, maybe also grabbing something from a pickleball from Florida and taking it to a spot where pickleball is not as popular or whatever. Have you had examples of that?
The biggest example I can give y'all, and probably the most transformational one I can give you, Shane, is going from Montana to Dayton, Tennessee. Our viewers probably don't know. I identify as LGBTQ plus.
Sure.
So going down to Dayton, Tennessee.
You've been in some pretty conservative parts of the world.
Very conservative parts. Dayton, Tennessee in 2000, let me make sure I'm correct, 2004, they tried to pass an ordinance to ban homosexuals from the county. And that is... And
then you were their director 10 years later?
Yep. And so that was the funny part, was taking those inclusive, diversity, and equitable ideas, because I started a DEI board up there. And now I'm like, going to Tennessee, this I don't know how that's going to happen. I'll tell you the biggest thing that changed through that was just, I always have to tell people this. I don't even know how to put this, to be honest. At the end of the day, don't let anything stop you from what you want to do, including your sexuality, your goal, anything like that. You have to make sure that you still are staying on the prize of what you want to do. And taking those ideas is a risk in doing that. But like I said, that was one thing that we did was, okay, diversity, inclusion, equity wise, me putting some of those ideas is not going to work. But me putting sign language out there, because there is a population for that everybody can be inclusive to, that's a start in diversity, inclusion, equity. So like I said, you deliver that, you implement it, but then we have to ask ourselves, are we being consistent with our goals, values, and mission of remaining diverse, inclusive, equitable? So taking those, Shane, was tough, but it changed people's ideas on how diversity and inclusion works, because people see it as just, race, sexuality. It's people's ideas, religions, their personalities, where they come from, the experiences they've been through. And it helped me open up the eyes to people in Dayton. It helped open up my eyes as well to see the commodity coming together over coming into a place where I'm thinking, oh no, I could be.
Well, I bet if someone who we would probably label as very close-minded didn't agree with your sexual orientation, and then you meet them and they find out you like sports just like they do, and you like pickleball just like they do, and you love programming, that probably does open them up. It makes them realize that probably is some of those things that aids in the way that people overcome prejudices that they have. Exactly. Have you experienced any of that?
I tell people all the time, you can go learn diversity, inclusion, and equity from a book, you can go do it. Living it is very, very different.
Yeah.
And taking that, and that's where I have to open up to people and say, hey, my sexuality is one little hundred of me.
Yeah.
But guess what? Programming, basketball, pickleball, connecting with other people, engaging with other people, going to church, these things that are around my life.
They all connect with that too.
They all connect with it. And guess what? When you connect that, and that was something that taught me in Dayton, was when you connect that and you connect that passion, that love with the community together, it just makes it well-rounded. And it was one of the toughest decisions leaving Dayton.
Yeah. Because you had acceptance. You had found acceptance of who you were as a person completely.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Even though you had some people out. The funniest one was, hey, I can't come to your parks anymore. I don't want my children to be gay. And you hear that, and then guess what? You hear it 9 months later being a director going, I'm really sorry I made that comment to you. You've opened up my eyes. Yeah. That is the biggest thing, better than a grant, better than any program that you can do, because that's just impacting a community as a whole beyond Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I would think going to what I would assume, because even parts of Florida are pretty conservative, I believe, right? So you've almost lived historically in areas that were pretty conservative. Have you ever thought, man, this life, I could do this easier somewhere else? Or you're like, no, I love the challenge of going into a small town that in a lot of ways aligns with my values and showing them that I'm just like them.
Go be the change that you want to see later in the future, not for just people, family, friends, everything.
Sure.
I have a niece that's non-binary. I'm worried about her.
Right.
And guess what? If I can do anything I can for programs, for parks, for people to be more diverse, inclusion, and equitable, so they can be safe, then I'm going to do that. And not for just them, but for everybody. And so we have to start at that. But I love the challenge of it because, if I go to New York, Chicago as a speaker, they have diversity, inclusion, equity. But guess what? Some of these places don't do that. And so you have to go be the change in order to make that impact, just like I didn't have that change coming from my hometown. So it's about internally what you want to do and take that externally out.
Tiffany talked about that in one of hers. And we've all talked about how programming, I think, Tom, you said it, you had a kid and all of a sudden you start thinking about what it's like for your kids to go through programs that you're offering that you didn't think about before you had kids, and so I think in a lot of ways we all program, and that's probably the biggest acknowledgement of hiring a very diverse workforce makes you provide a very diverse offering.
Shane asked you a question a minute ago, Nathan, about, you could live and work in any different state. It might be easier for you. And I know you and I have talked several times over the last few years, and I'm sure you've had a lot of challenges that maybe you didn't think you were going to have going into it, just based off of the political regime. And I'm sure there's some things that you have overcome that you now feel stronger than ever. Is there one thing or like one tipping point that was like, man, that was such an achievement, and I'm so proud that it did come up, or that I was able to overcome that, because it's only going to make me better and this town and community better?
I'd say the biggest one was getting the Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthy Places grant. At that time, Jay, I'll never forget this. I will never forget. The county mayor looked at me and said, ain't no gay boy going to get that dang grant. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget it. At the time, Dayton did, for anybody that had a disability, the most accessible park was to go to Chattanooga. That's 45 minutes away.
Wow. And
so we have over 12, 13% of the population that has kids or adults with special needs that cannot access this equipment. So I'm thinking, this is for a brand new park that it can be inclusive for anybody. And it came to a point where people were like, if you can't do this, you're done. And that was a tipping point in it. So now I had to prove myself as a person, but now as a Parks and Rec director. And from that, the biggest thing was working with people, community engagement, and looking at it internally and saying, how can I impact in such a positive way and have that driving force? If those people from outside that were telling me, oh, you won't get this done because you're gay or all this, I probably wouldn't have got that. And so sometimes that test that you go through provides that testimony for young professionals, for other people like that. And that was a tipping point for me, Jay. But at that point, guess what? You do the job and you have fun doing it. You take that passion, you drive it, take that hard work, and make sure that you provide that goal and objective. And we got to do that. When we applied for it, it was 1.5 million. We got 4.8.
Wow.
Wow.
And it'll be completed this year as a top 10 park in the state of Tennessee. So
That's really cool.
I'm beyond excited. But that right there, the biggest thing I remember telling my mom was, why are you crying? Are you excited because of it? It's like, because people see me in a different light now. They don't see my sexuality. They don't see all of that. They just see Nathan as a Parks and Rec director, and they see me as a person internally. And that's what we love to see. And that's part of changing minds, hearts.
Sure. Yeah. And the acceptance of that, plus the fulfillment of actually doing an almost $5 million park that's going to be one of the best in the, did you say the Tennessee area?
In Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm excited. I remember all my mentors like, dang it. Why can't it? Why?
Are you going to be there for the grand opening?
At some point I will be. They're starting on the park. They started about 2 months ago, so it should be about a 10-month process. Yeah. So when that happens, they'll give me a call, tell me where to be at. So
that's another interesting thing. And back to Tom with it a little bit too. But we have all in our career done something that we're proud of, but we had to leave it at one stage or another to let someone else finish it, or you got it accomplished, but you still have to leave that agency. Tom, do you have anything that rings a bell? Because you've been close to where you've moved a couple different times, but you've had to leave a couple agencies.
Yeah. The best community center in this whole area is the last agency that I was working for, and I mean it's gorgeous. It's something that every agency aspires to have, and you take that with a grain of salt in the sense that my former director Mike Curley in the town of Chili, not Chile. And so town of Chili, we met actually about a month ago, and he said, it's changed his job so much. You know what I mean? So you to a point, you ask for things and you want this for your community, but it definitely changed what his job is. And it's some of the passion, some of the projects that he was able to do before that, he's no longer able to do. So there are some challenges there, right? You pick that up. But yes, leaving that agency right when they were going through the planning process, this community center and this major project, it was tough, because I knew what was on the horizon. I knew what we were about to embark on, and ultimately, we talked about regrets, right? I have no regrets. I definitely love where I am, and this is the place for me, it locally anyway. So. Yeah, I could resonate. And Nathan, I want to transition into some of that, what you were talking about earlier about, your upbringing, the challenges that you've had. And earlier in your introduction, Shane talked about your motivational speaking. So I want to hear about that. I think our listeners want to hear about that. If it's something you'd be willing to open up to us on, tell us a little bit about the topics. Who are you talking, who are you aiming to? Who's your audience typically? And can you maybe give us a really big impact story? I talked about that earlier, about how when you just get that email of how what you did impacted someone's life. I have no doubt that that's probably happened from what you've been doing, and I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I mean, I'll just be honest with all of you. I don't even think Jay knows this even. I did not want to be a public motivational speaker. Good Lord, you have to get up there and sweat and everything. And I'll tell you all this. Again, it comes down to passion. It comes down to what you want to serve. My coming out story was a little bit different. I came out through an article while I was in college. A gay basketball player had not came out in the South, and a gay college athlete had never came out in the state of Arkansas. And so I had pretty much written a coming out story and just said, this is my story. This is where I'm at. And it talked about sexual assault. It talked about suicide. It talked about homophobia. It talked about religion. It talked about athletics, even recreation. Wow. All those tied in, and didn't realize that an Out Sports article would go to the Times, to the Post. And then all of a sudden people were asking, hey, can you come speak here? Do this, do this. I don't want to speak. But then I realized the things I went through that I talked about. There are other people going through that right now. So my question is, am I going to be a light bulb and stand here, or am I going to be the light and do something about it? And because we see a lot of light bulbs in not just in our profession, but even in our culture and life. And we have to see where the light's at, because we have to provide light for other people to shine as well, so they can see. And from there, I just started speaking, went to Chicago Pride was my first speech. Oh, wow. Went all around to Dallas, Fort Lauderdale, all the way to San Francisco, spoke for Nike, which was cool, spoke for different universities like Kansas State University. And so it's been really incredible going on that journey. But part of that is because you take those tests that you go through and put those into testimonies. And the biggest thing right now, Tom, Jay, Shane, the biggest thing I want to do in my career now, moving forward with that public speaking, is how can Parks and Recreation professionals, departments take diversity, inclusion, and equitable standards, practices, human resources, programming, everything. How can they combine so everybody can do it? Because I see people in my town, I see people in Bozeman, Panama City Beach that cannot access Parks and Recreation agencies.
Really?
And cannot access those programs. Right. So that's one thing I want to bring. And I hope other agencies can bring that too. And for young professionals as well, because we're moving in that stance of providing more diverse, inclusive and equitable standards. Sure. So why not be a part of that trend so everybody can be included? So yeah, that was part of the reason why I did want to go speak and now transfer into that. Now going to speak for different conferences and associations. And just, again, it's just what I love to do. And like I said, it's part of that will that came from those experiences, making sure that other people don't have to go through that.
Was there one spot somewhere on a stage or in a maybe a TV studio somewhere where you just were like, I can't believe I'm here?
I'd say my first Chicago Pride.
Yeah.
It was huge. I will never forget. I have my phone right here. This phone right actually had my speech, and guess what? It got deleted.
Oh no!
Right when I got on stage.
You're winging it.
It was I'll tell you all this, gentleman, it was the best speech I ever done.
Really?
Because at the end of the day, the best meetings, the best speeches are going to come from the heart whenever you don't even have it. And it's so true even in my profession today. But yeah, that was one that I was like, oh crap, I'm not a speaker. This is not who I am. But I did have a story and I did have a purpose and I did have an audience and objectives. And the biggest thing was, can they get something out of that I went through to make sure that they don't have to go through that?
Well, if you speak in front of thousands of people, I guess, 50 people at an RPA seems like a much smaller crowd.
Not too bad. After 5,000, I was like, after probably about 1,000, it's like, okay, they're just people.
Yeah,
There's just a bunch of people.
Yeah. Is it daunting to speak in front of people that are in your profession versus people that they may be part of a movement, but you're probably not going to know them or even ever see them again versus at a state or national conference where you're like, I'm going to see these people every year for the rest of my career?
Well, we did DEI programming. It was a pretty much presentation I did over that, and it was something that Tennessee Parks and Rec was like, well, we've never really fully stepped into DEI when it comes to just programming. We've seen DEI as a big, huge coat, but we've never seen it break it down. And so with that, it was scary going in there because now you're seeing some people from conservative areas in Tennessee watching you and saying, why do we need this? Why do we need diversity, inclusion, equity in our program? But then going out and saying, oh, wait, there's people not like me. And that's one thing that we have to tell people in that. And so that was kind of scary, telling people, hey, I need you to be self-aware of who you are and then be self-aware of the community around you as well and educating them over that. But it turned out to be education for them on how they could reach other people. I remember having a director that was very conservative saying, I want to learn from you how to be more diverse in our programs.
Yeah.
And just to have that, I mean, that means more to me than just, again, anything.
Jay and Tom, y'all both spoken in front of large crowds of people. Did y'all have a oh shit moment? I can't believe I'm up here.
Early on, yes. It's funny. Speaking used to be something I was terrified to do. I think maybe we all felt that way at some point. I mean, it's normal. No one grows up and says, I want to speak in front of thousands or hundreds of people or 50 people. But then when you start programming, that's all you're doing. You might be in front of 30 or 40 kids, but you're still speaking in front of a group. Whether it's kids, whether it's adults, whether it's a speech, whether it's an activity, or whether you're running a league, whether you're giving a coach's training for a parent meeting for a sport, it's kind of the same thing. And, I think we're all so passionate about our profession, about what we do, that it comes more natural because we care about what we do. We know what we do. We love what we do. But I'll never forget, when I was the director in Indian Trail, having to present at council meetings every couple of weeks. The first month I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's very different because, presenting in front of families and kids is one thing. When I say presenting, programming, but then when you're going to present in front of your elected officials and your mayor and in the public, it's a little bit different. But then after a couple times, it's the same thing every time, maybe different topics. And then you just go to more people when you go to a state or national conference and, you kind of just get comfortable with it and, you go with the flow. And I've been in a few situations, like Nathan said, with you have something planned out, whether it's a speech or a slide, and it's technology doesn't work. So you got to totally pivot. And, I think it's a good thing. The more that happens, the more you can just kind of fly off the radar and go from your heart or go from what you can present on. And then it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with interviewing. It's you never know what interview technique that organization's going to use. So you have to be prepared for everything. And then when you speak in front of people, you have to be prepared for everything.
Yeah, no, the interview, I got to know Nathan through him applying for our assistant director job last time it was posted. So that's another benefit of applying for jobs is just getting to expand your network. Tom, I don't know if you've had an oh shit moment, but I did watch you fall off a skateboard in front of a bunch of kids, and I know that's to haunt you.
Yeah, that was an oh shit moment, I guess. A different kind. Yeah, it hurt.
That you hear about every year.
Yeah, I do. That hurt me more mentally than it did physically. I can tell you that. Yes. Yeah, I like to consider myself fairly athletic or whatever you want to call it, but skateboarding has never been my thing, I guess. And I thought I could just jump right on. Anyway, no, in terms of speaking, I believe in what Nathan said, and Jay, you covered a lot of topics. but really it comes from the heart. And if you're talking about something you're passionate about, that fear, even if it's in the beginning, the first 30 seconds, where you get a little overcome and a little anxious because you're about to start. I've never been the kind of person that's really been on script. It's all, and this show is a testament to what we're doing, right? That this show is all about free flow and what comes naturally to all of us. I think we've talked about that at the session at NRPA. There are podcasts that are, they know the guest, they have a list of questions, and that is how it goes, right? And maybe the guest, they might even get the questions in advance, but not here. Nathan, you have no idea what we're about to throw at you, right? Like all of these questions. So I love that type of conversation. And I can even go back to one of my, maybe the biggest oh shit moment was my brother's wedding, speaking as his best man. I wrote down a speech. I wrote it down, right? And that's just kind of the way my mind works. I read it. And by the time I got up there, and granted, there was a few drinks involved. By the time I got up there, the speech the actual piece of paper never came out. I was like, this is amazing. This feels natural. And I'm speaking about something that I'm passionate about. And that's where I think honestly, that might've been the moment that I really fell in love with being able to, carry a message on to people in a room.
Toastmaster style. Well, Nathan, I appreciate the time. I think we've had you for about an hour now. I got one more question, unless the guys have anything. We believe work-life balance, work-life blend, the ability to get away and recharge in whatever capacity that looks like is very important nowadays in our field. I would love to know how the environments that you've been in have changed that. So did recharging in Bozeman, Montana look different than recharging in Panama City? To me, it feels like it would have, right? And so how did you find work-life balance, and what did you pursue to just get away for a little bit in some of these cities that you've used to work in? And do you miss any of those things in those unique areas?
I do miss Dayton, Tennessee a lot, being director there. I mean, out in the mountains, hiking everywhere. Like I said, those experiences are super fun, but they get you to a point, I always believe that, I go by my motto every day. Not everybody's religious, but I go by Jeremiah 29:11. I have plans for you, declares the Lord, and to prosper you. And I have to keep moving on forward toward that and making sure that the environments that I'm in, yeah, my cup will run dry sometimes. But that's where you have to look at what fills my cup. Family does. Me going to serve people fills my cup up. Being on this podcast, being able to help other people as well, fills that cup up. Getting away for a little bit and taking some time to be able to recharge is just, I always tell young professionals, always take that time to have a little bit to recharge. But remember that at the end of the day, you're always going to be serving no matter what. And
he's saying serving, not surfing. This isn't a Panama City.
Not surfing.
He's not. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you're always going to do that. And in retrospect, it comes back and serves you. And I want young professionals to know that once you serve other people, it comes right back to you. And even sometimes when you don't get that back, guess what? They need that. You provide that service, but guess what? You may need something they can provide too. I think that was one thing that really helped me is finding that commonality between people. Because when I look at people, they see me as different. It's like, hey, let's find that commonality and then go from there. So honestly, the experiences of doing that and just having that and doing those little things help fill those cups up, even in those environments, even having people like, Shane and Jay and Tom, getting to a point where like, hey, you're doing great. You're doing awesome. Yeah. Keep killing it. Little things like that make a big difference in diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I think that's something we have to promote more in Parks and Rec departments to build each other up, to build the profession up, because we're not an easy profession. No, we're not. So it's like, how can you help support somebody else besides yourself and your staff too? Yeah. And so that's one thing that has been able to fill my cup up, is seeing other Parks and Rec professionals being able to help others in order for them to grow in their own communities and in their lives. I
hate to admit this on the pod, and Hannah hopefully will edit it out, but Jay's really good at that. Definitely better than I am. He's probably better in some ways than Tom. I think probably the best at us is reaching out to people when they win an award or their next turn and just saying, hey, maybe not even knowing them, but introducing themselves and trying to. And that's, after you said that, it's probably something I've got to get better at, which is just reaching out to young professionals that I'm impressed with, and I'll see them from a distance and be like, wow, that's really cool. Yeah. They're doing that. But I never reach out and say, I just want you to know I saw it. I'm impressed by it, and keep it up. What an incredible thing. I just think, oh, that's cool. Someone's going to tell them. I just never do, but I need to.
And I mean, Janie, when you have things like that, when Cheryl Ely from Knoxville came down to my first ever tournament, it meant the absolute world, because guess what? That helped me get the grant, and guess what? It helped me form a lifelong mentorship and friends.
Expand your network.
Yeah, but
Makes you feel more comfortable in that area.
Yeah, but it gives you some of the best people that you can not just grow in Parks and Rec, but just personally. And so that's
I got to put my What Would Jay Do bracelet on, unfortunately, I'm afraid.
Ooh, I've never heard that before.
No.
That is something that Jay does always. He's always done that. Whether he's always reaching out to folks, he's always in schools.
But I think kind of similar to what like Nathan just said too, with his experience with Tennessee folks, is like, I had people do that for me. You know, we talked earlier about like, have you thought about where you would be if this happened or that happened? Like, I don't know that I would be in the situation I'm in today if I didn't have people that reached out to me 15 years ago or 16 years ago and like just give me a hand or be willing to listen or introduce me to people. So it's those little things that go so far. And it's just like, you know, we talk about always wanting to get back to our profession, which we all do. And the young professionals that are coming up that, you know, we can meet at conference and we can share ideas and we can share a business card, like that little thing, like you just don't know how that's going to impact them 5 years down the road. And try to do that, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for folks that did that for me.
Yeah, we got to get to a point where young professionals are cheering on our other professionals that are working in these larger cities. Going through those, because I'll tell you this, it's not easy going through those larger departments, because there's storms, there's trials, there's tribulations every day. And that's where young professionals need to step up and say, hey, let me provide that support. Not so I can get a job later to be a director, but it's like authenticity in order to build each other up, because that's how you're going to, because guess what? Once I build someone up like that, guess what? Am I not going to get that back, or are they going to help that experience benefit other communities? That's what it's all about.
That's a good point, because we've seen young professionals shine brightly and then fade, almost like a star of some sort. And it's because, in a lot of ways, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but in a lot of my experiences, they were only worried about themselves. And so they had that Midas, gold touch moment when they were young professionals, but it burnt out because they were only thinking of themselves. And those ones that also think about the organization and the industry and they want to help wherever they can, they have the ability to sustain, it seems like, a lot longer than those that only have the fuel of their own drive or passion. Yeah,
exactly. But guess what? It takes a whole vehicle. It takes our whole professional force to do that.
Yeah.
Not just one.
Dude, it's been great. Thanks for coming on. I actually owe him tacos, so we're going to go get some tacos. The only way I could get him to come on today. No.
There you go.
But I really appreciate you coming on today, and it was a great perspective, great conversation.
Yeah, Shane, Jay,
Thanks,
Tom, thank you all very much for anything.
It's been a pleasure, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan. I'd shake your hand too, but we don't all have the luxury of having in-person guests.
Right. Not all in person.
No, I'll just see a skateboard and remind myself of you.
That's right.
Yes.
Perfect.
Whenever you see someone falling on a skateboard, think of Tom.
Show them the scar.
Where's that? Let's see it.
It's really you can't really see it. There's a very minor scar. It's very hard to see, but it exists. I promise. No stitches. Hannah brought me a Band-Aid.
Hannah had to go to the front desk and say her child had fallen so we could get some Band-Aids. Yeah.
I know he's trying to listen. I know we have Tony Hawk. I know there was Tom Hawk.
That's right. He was out there skating it up. So
never been on a skateboard ever since that day.
It's a good time.
That's awesome.
All right, Nathan. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Anytime, y'all. Thank y'all so much.
So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I do want to ask if I can, Shane, when this is one of those weeks where we were kind of saying, hey, are we gonna have a guest or not? How did you get this to work? You said you had someone lined up, clearly Nathan.
Yeah.
How did you make this happen? It worked into his
He's
schedule.
been working on it for a little bit, and he was going to be in the area, so it just felt like it was going to work out really well. So I didn't send y'all the invites until I think a day or two before, but I was thrilled. I was telling him, I was like, we're going to go to my office, and I'm gonna link in my work computer so it has so we can make it look like he had zoomed in, and then just pop it.
So and then we had to see two of your face.
Yeah, just what we needed.
Awesome.
It's a great topic to think about, because we don't talk about all the different facets of DEI. I know there's been a lot of talk about DEI over the last several years, but a lot of times it just comes down to like we're focusing on like one or two aspects of it, but we're not talking about all the other aspects of it that go into that. And like the sign language aspect, that's awesome. I know we've had a couple conversations in our department recently, but there's so many layers to it that we need to dive into it deeper.
Signs and Seeds. What a freaking
that's cool.
The name. They need to make a shirt. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great conversation. Great job, Shane. And I think I said this obviously to Nathan. So far it's been somewhat rare where we don't know the guests, right? And I do want to say that I really enjoy those conversations. I hope that the two of you felt that way when Jill was on, and Becky. I didn't know Becky very, very well, and of course Nathan I had never met before. So I really do enjoy those conversations. This was a really good one.
It was fun to do. So Jay is next.
Yes, next week,
Thursday.
You want to tell us who you got?
Nope, not today.
I think I know who it is. So I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess right now that they work for NRPA. That's gonna be on one of the clues.
Well, he's got the next 3, so it could be.
Oh wow!
He's been putting in.
I'll leave you hanging.
Awesome, guys. Good to see y'all again, and I had a lot of fun. Y'all have a good weekend. See you next time.
Okay, later.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.